talk about the dangers of deception. So, what does deception means? Deception refers to the act, big or small, cruel or kind, of encouraging people to believe information that is not true. Lying is a common form of deception, stating something known to be untrue with the intent to deceive. We all prefer to think of ourselves as bright, so we are frequently reluctant to acknowledge when we have occasionally been taken advantage of by others. It's possible that we purchased something that wasn't as stated, that we received inferior goods to what we paid for, or even that the item was marketed as reliable yet contained numerous flaws. We were outraged and felt tricked when we realized the reality. We frequently ended up worse off than if we had never been involved with a situation, since we did not obtain what we had bargained for. So, I am going to tell a history that somehow related to deception. A child was born in Italy in 1882 who would go on to transform the world, and his name would become well known to the general public, but not for the reason you might think. Charles was the man whose family had grown so tired of him stealing money from the church when he was a small lad that in 1903, when he was 21 years old, they deported him to the United States. Charles was a server at a restaurant, but he never learned his lesson, since he consistently undercharged the clients so he could keep the difference in his own pocket. As a result, he was dismissed. Charles, however, isn't just a stupid young man. Prior to his departure to Canada in 1907, Charles had a talent for math. He worked for a bank, but things there worsened because his old tendencies never disappeared. He once more cashed customer checks after forging their signatures, but this time he was detected and sentenced to 3 years in prison. After being freed, Charles returned to the US and devised a plan to smuggle Italian immigrants into the US from Canada. But he was once again apprehended and sentenced to 2 years in prison. When he was released this time, he immediately traveled to Boston, where in November 1919 he had the inspiration for his second, more elaborate plan. This was allegedly accomplished by purchasing postal reply coupons at a discount in other nations and redeeming them at face value in the US, where the currency was significantly stronger or better. He assured his customers that they would make a 50% profit in 45 days or 100% profit in 90 days. But what exactly are postal reply coupons? I'll explain first. A worldwide postal convention decided to distribute these coupons all across the world in 1907. The purpose of allowing the bearers to exchange the international coupons for postage stamps in their home nations was to address the actual issue that existed in America at the time. This was a technique to enable immigrants' relatives back home to write the family in America, as those who immigrated to America could afford to buy stamps, but those who stayed there could not. The idea behind these post reply coupons was that if someone went to a non American post office, let's say in Europe, and purchased them with US dollars, Then, when they brought the coupons back to the US and cashed them in, they would receive US postage that was worth many times more than the US dollar they paid for them. Now that we are aware of the importance of these coupons, let's return to Charles, who was having a brainstorming session to develop his future plan. Charles believed he could earn $5 for every dollar spent on postal reply coupons by exchanging them for stamps. He would buy more coupons and cash them for other purchases, making an absurd 400% profit from the initial purchases. It appeared to be an impossible plan, or at least Charles had said it would be. But lo and behold, Charles came up with a brilliant idea using his criminally creative mind. Of course, this scheme had a flaw because he needed to hire people to line up and collect coupons and stamps, gather them up, and ship them overseas. As a result, this would probably cost more than the money generated by the scheme itself. Instead of investing in any coupon stamps, he made the decision to simply inform his current and prospective customers that they would become rich in 3 months by using his product. Charles fit perfectly in during this period since the US economy was growing and people were looking for quick ways to become wealthy. In other words, he was in the ideal situation at the ideal time. Since of his criminal charisma and natural ability to communicate, Charles was even more successful with his plot because he made everyone want even a small piece of the pie, which led to rapid word of mouth spread. Since Charles promised to double investors' money, people would not hesitate to withdraw their entire life savings from a bank in order to invest with him. The only problem was that Charles would actually pay investors as promised, giving the impression that the entire scheme was legitimate and causing the investors to go crazy and become addicted. Investors had contributed $400,000 by March 1920, but Charles owed them $500,000 as a result of the promises made in the scheme. Nevertheless, most people trusted him because they believed that investors would keep their money invested so they could earn even more. And as a result, Charles could always make the payments when they were due. Investors contributed $1.6 million 2 months later in May 1920, and by July, this had grown to $41 million. However, at this point, Charles still owed the investors up to about 34% more. And here was where the difficulty lay, since the more cash Charles received, the deeper his debt became. He would be taking on more than he could handle if he guaranteed that everyone's money would double. However, none of these matters if investors don't want their money outright. Charles soon reached an average daily income of $3.4 million, at which point he spent $7 million on a house with a heated pool and air conditioning, things that were unheard of in 1920. In order to get rid of his previous employer, he also purchased the same shipping company at the same time he was smuggling Italian immigrants. As the throngs outside Charles' office grew, officials began to have suspicions. Police were called to the scene to investigate, but after speaking with him, only two of the three policemen decided to get involved. In actuality, Charles was partnering with a fifth of Boston's own police force. The first article criticizing Charles appeared in a Boston newspaper on July 26. It asked if he could make 300% profit for his investors, then why does he put his money in the bank, where it would only make 2 to 3% interest? And why not just invest it all in himself? Another article claimed that the math didn't work out because 160 million of these coupons would need to be in circulation to generate such profits. But there are actually only about 27,000 of these in circulation. When the news pieces were released, there was a tremendous deal of fear because both papers had solid, if not excellent, arguments to make. Charles' office experienced a riot. $27 million was withdrawn in just 2 days. Despite this, he was able to reimburse everyone, and he did it cheerfully while he served them coffee and donuts as they stood in line. Investors actually reinvested their withheld funds as their fears subsided. However, Charles' heyday would soon come to an end as a result of government regulators and more negative news, which claimed he was totally insolvent. Another panic ensued, and many rushed to withdraw all of their money. Although more than $200 million had been invested, Charles was now $110 million short. Everyone simultaneously attempted to withdraw money, but he was unable to do so. His enterprise had collapsed by August 1920. He had been charged with 86 charges of fraud, and many investors had lost everything. It was a crucial lesson for them and for us to always conduct thorough research before making an investment. He would be a name that people would never forget, as I had already said. So, exactly who is he? He went by Charles Ponzi, and the plan he came up with more than a century ago became known as a Ponzi scheme in his honor. Even though Ponzi has long since passed away, he continues to harm lives because of the many crooks who were motivated by his scam, including Bernie Madoff, who ran the biggest Ponzi scheme in history. One of the largest investment frauds in Philippine history, Joel A. Apolinario of Kappa Investment, which occurred not too long ago, financially destroyed 5 million Filipinos. The bulk of them were low-income Filipinos. Sam Bankman-Fried, also known as SBF, took advantage of the developing technology of cryptocurrencies. His company, FTX, a crypto exchange company, went bankrupt because SBF's company was a Ponzi scheme, and like every Ponzi scheme, the beginning of SBF's demise was brought on by rumors and bad press becoming true and investors panicking and withdrawing all of their investments at once. Since Bernie Madoff's Ponzi scheme in 2000s, this one was the biggest. And today, SBF has ruined millions of investors, and history has kept reminding and teaching us what to look for, the signs, so that none of us will ever become victims again. And yet, when excitement and greed take over our minds and hearts suddenly, when the scheme falls apart, we're all shocked, acting like this is something new and we're victims all over again. I guess none of us will ever learn from history, since history also tells us that we're all humans and that will always make human errors. I hope you enjoyed today's topic, and I want to thank you all for listening to this amazing history of Ponzi schemes, fraud, theft, and a little glimpse into the world of business and finance. Thank you.